White Sox fans, welcome into a little happy hour edition of Sox On Tap. It's Johnny Nani alongside my guy, NWI Steve, talking about more White Sox winning ways. Steve, how you doing this Thursday afternoon?
Hey, yo, Jonathan, doing well. A 5-2 homestand, as I like to get frequently. Anything is possible.
That's what it feels like. Playing much better as of late. What is it? 11-8 since the dreaded 3-22 start. Like you mentioned, the 5-2 homestand, winning both series of that homestand. And, you know, we were riding high a little bit, even though it was after a loss on Sunday's game, but we had a lot of good things to say from the Thursday through Saturday of that Cleveland series. And then you dropped the opener of this Nats series on Tuesday after the rain out Monday. But they got it done with back-to-back shutouts too, Steve. Going from the team being shut out to doing the shutting out is pretty cool stuff.
Jonathan, my sources are telling me that Brian Bannister extension. It's in the
Extend
works.
Bannister.
It is that Bannister season, for life.
That's what we're looking at if we're on our extreme ends of the spectrum, as we like to do here at Sox on Tap. So we'll get into all of what went into the White Sox, continued success in this one. Talk Fetty facing his former team. We'll talk Garrett Crochet. We'll talk bullpen. We'll talk Corey Lee, a little Andrew Vaughn. There's a trade that happened, so we'll get to that. Maybe some fun, if that's allowed. And then we'll also take a look at what's on tap next, as we usually do, and look at the weekend series coming up in the Bronx. Before we do any of that, though, make sure you're subscribed over on YouTube at On Tap Sportsnet there. Give us a follow on the socials at Sox On Tap and at On Tap Sportsnet. And check out ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports, literature, and podcasting needs. Okay, Steve, let's jump right into this one. White Sox are now 14-30. While it's still not a commendable mark by any stretch of the imagination, you've won back-to-back series now for the first time this season. 3 of the last 4, like I said, 11-18 in their last 19 after the 3-22 start. Morale is definitely much higher than, say, we were at this time last month.
Things are feeling a lot better when you consider the fact that they're on a 51 win pace right now. That's certainly a lot more palatable than a 20 or 21 win pace that they were on there for quite a bit. So it's been a much more palatable performance out of this team here in the last 20 games or so. And even, the games that they've lost, I mean, they've had some competitive losses in their game 1 of the doubleheader on Tuesday. They were down 3-1 in the late innings, clawed back to tie the game up and put themselves in a position to win a game. Mr. Clean with some questionable bullpen management, as he is one to do, having John Brebbia go back out there for a second inning. But you can live with those kinds of losses a lot more than what we saw those first 25 games right there. So, obviously you would like to see them, continue on these winning ways here, but it has been just a more enjoyable brand of baseball from this team out of the last 3 weeks. And, we needed that because the morale was very, very bad during that 3-22 stretch. And, obviously you had to see people talking all the time about how they're not watching the White Sox, all the things that they're doing instead of it's weird. We haven't seen a lot of those tweets in the last 3 weeks. It's kind of fascinating. Then I twittered about this myself. It's almost as if that was being done for show.
Right. Yeah. Weird. That was one of my favorite Family Guy clips. Weird. Yeah. Funny how that happened, Steve, but winning, it feels better. I mean, I was talking to a couple of buddies out watching the game on Saturday, and I was saying, if you're, while we understand what the reality of this current situation is, you're still a fan of the team. Shouldn't you want them to win? Like, you don't want to pile it on. Just be like, oh yeah, I just want them to be historically bad so we can rub it in Jerry's face and all that. I understand the frustration with all that, but it's like, come on. At the end of the day, it's like winning is more fun than losing. # confirmed.
And the whole thing with this, rubbing it in Jerry's face, it's going to accomplish nothing. Anybody that thinks that is going to get him to change the way that he does business or the way that he runs this team, listen, I've got some beachfront property in Siberia I'd like to sell you for that, because I'm old enough to remember that when the unfortunate events of 2016 happened, that was going to change how Jerry Reinsdorf did things. Having to see that happen on the other side of town, that was going to change things. And then when he usurped power from his general manager and team president and brought in his buddy to manage the team again in 2021, we were told that was going to change things because TLR was going to get Jerry to spend differently than he had previously. That didn't happen. So I think we know at this juncture, nothing will possibly change how Jerry Reiser operates this baseball team. So having a historically bad season is only going to have negative ramifications on us. It ain't going to do anything to him and how he does things. So this thought process people have along those lines, I think they really need to throw that out the window, to be honest with you.
Right, I'm right there with you. So let's focus on the on-field product too, because we already know what the status up in front office is in the owner's box, right? Let's talk about on the field. On Tuesday night, in the nightcap of this doubleheader, it was Fetty's revenge. Steve, A plus branding. I had to tip my cap to you on this one. I love the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I don't know why I didn't think of it earlier, but it was Fetty's revenge facing his former team, and he was lights out. Tell me about his start.
He was really awesome going out there once again, attacking the strike zone early in counts, throwing strike one with consistency, operating ahead and allowing himself to utilize all of his weapons. And there was just a ton of soft contact again from this Washington Nationals club. And this is something that Fetty has done for the majority of his starts to this point. If you look aside from that outing in St. Louis a couple of weeks ago, this has been a pretty consistent theme for him. And this is one of the things that I talked about and I was going to be interested in at the start of the season. And it is something that really has carried over by and large to this point of just going out there, attacking the hitters and utilizing that sweeper and that heavy sinker to get soft contact up and down throughout the lineup and missing bats with consistency here. You just have to love what you're seeing from Erick Fedde and how he is going out there and he's just taking the ball and he's just going right at guys. And he's of the belief that nobody's going to be able to touch him. And that's what I want to see out of a starting pitcher. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So he goes 7 innings, 3 hits, 0 runs, 0 walks, very important, and 6 strikeouts. Now 4-0 with a 2.60 ERA. Our guy Besnick put this out there with the B-WAR rankings among AL pitchers, and he was at the top of that board after the start on Tuesday. Too early to start talking about Cy Young? I mean, he's got to be in the running right now because people love doing their way too early lists. Why the hell not?
Yeah, I think at this point through the first 6 weeks of the season, it's definitely fair to have him in consideration for that. I think we all know being on a White Sox team in general isn't going to help you when it comes to trying to win a Cy Young. They haven't had a Cy Young Award winner since the team of my youth, the 93 squad with Blackjack McDowell, a team that is obviously very near and dear to my heart, but it's been a long time since they've had one on the south side of Chicago here. And I don't think that for a Sox team that's going to lose 100 plus games, that it is very likely that you would see this team have somebody win individual awards like that. But Erick Fedde, he's definitely in that mix through the first 6 weeks of the season, because you look across the landscape of the American League, there aren't a whole lot of guys that are throwing the ball better than him right now.
Right. Yeah. And I just had to mention that because, like I said, he was top that baseball reference WAR leaderboard. And I get that MLB morning digest, from MLB.com. And after like April, they were already doing, if the postseason ended today. And, it's talking up like awards like that. And you've got, was it Bleacher Report? They do those lists, they love their listicles over there. So, you know what? When there's finally something positive at the top for the White Sox, we'll talk about it. So I wanted to bring that up here. If not for, Cy Young, depending on how everything shakes, I think he's a prime candidate for a AL Comeback Player of the Year. That would be something that I would bestow upon him if the success can continue. Maybe not at this exact level, because like you said, there are complications that come with playing for the White Sox. And who knows how that'll hold up with run support and defense behind him. Bullpen behind him so much after that, but we'll have to see. Either way, it's a great start for Erick Fedde. Let's talk about offense in that game. You love the multi-home run strategy. We discussed its importance on our last episode, and we had discussed an individual player who had hit a home run over the weekend, and we asked the question, would this be the start of a run of him getting out of this funk? And that's Mr. Andrew Vaughn. What does he do? We both came to the conclusion that, it's not going to be the start of some magical run here. What does he do? He goes out and has a multi-homer game himself to provide all the offense in Tuesday's win. Steve, I think we just got to keep dumping on him, and hopefully the production continues.
I am once again asking Andrew Vaughn to deploy the multi-home run strategy. And he did that. Here's a little fun fact for you, folks, watching at home. I have been in attendance for all 3 of Andrew Vaughn's home runs this year. Am I a good luck charm? I'm not saying it, but I'm also not saying that. So, you guys might need to start maybe a GoFundMe or something to make sure that I'm at the ballpark more frequently, because I might be the straw that stirs this drink to get Andrew Vaughn turned around, because I call them out so frequently. But that was definitely very positive to see from him. I think
one to each field too. So I think that's
exactly
at least a good sign in his hitting. It's when you can go the other way with that power and not just get it out to the gap, get it over that fencing that they set up prior to the game, as you always like to say. That at least tells me that he's turning towards the right path. Now we're going to need to see production and up those numbers for what a premium power position should be at first base. However, it's better to start hitting home runs than to just keep being a slapdick and grounding into silver platter double plays.
You're 100% spot on with that, Jonathan. And I think also the fact that he was able to turn on a home run there, something he has not been doing with regularity this season. He's really not shown that pull side power. And that's obviously a pretty big concern for a lot of people. So to see him be able to do that on that second home run here, that was definitely a positive. And you have to feel good about it. I think I saw a stat there. He's got 3 homers and 3 doubles, I want to say, in his last 5 or 6 games there. So starting to see a little bit of slug, some extra base output coming from him, and that would certainly be welcomed for him, just given the magnitude of his struggles early on in the season. The fact that myself and just about everybody else within the fan base has been calling out that lack of production and wondering, hey, is a trip down to the International League going to be in order for him at some point, when I think particularly Luis Robert Jr. is ready to come back here. So if Andrew Vaughn is able to keep this up, keep this going here, maybe he's going to force the issue a little bit and cause the team to have to rethink some different options here from a roster configuration standpoint. And that's ultimately what you do want to see. I don't think I hope people understand. I don't want Andrew Vaughn to be bad. I very much want him to be good, but it just hasn't been there to this point. So if he's able to string some positive momentum together here, I enjoy that. If it helps the White Sox win games, I will be happy. So keep that going.
So I don't have exact metrics up in front of me in terms of his batted ball profile and all of that. But one thing that I will say is encouraging is that he is hitting the ball harder now. His exit velo has increased. So even when he was hitting the ball on the ground before he, kind of finally started elevating and getting some doubles, getting some home runs here, he was starting to hit the ball harder. So that is at least offering a, sliver of hope that he could continue this, but once again, it will require getting ball in air, ball in gap, and eventually ball over fence, right? For him to continue on a heater of sorts. Other than that, my question would be, you had called it out and you said you could stop with the Andrew Vaughn in the, number 2 hole, Mr. Clean. And then of course, later on in the game, he goes on to hit the 2 home runs there. Do you think that bump up there could be beneficial for him instead of having to hit in that cleanup or 3 spot?
Different guys respond to being in different spots in the batter's order. So, who knows? Maybe if Thomas Pham is doing what he's done to this point, being a table setter, getting on base, maybe that is going to help Andrew Vaughn to kind of relax a little bit, be in better position to see some fastballs early on in counts with an opportunity to go and try to do some damage on the baseball. So I still don't love it particularly right now, but it would be something if that was the thing that ultimately did kind of get him turned around a little bit. And I don't know. Did I fix somebody on this team again? This is just kind of a thing.
Yeah, I surely hope so. And I just bring that up because I think in an ideal world, Yohan Moncada would be your number 2 hitter. But guess what? Yohan Moncada is not coming back until, around the All-Star break, if that. So that's just wanted to bring that up because we had, a little twattering about the the placement in the order that eventually led to the Andrew Vaughn game there. Okay, let's move on to Wednesday's finale. And Garrett Crochet, unscathed but a bit inefficient, got his pitch count up early. Either way, though, no runs, nothing on his ledger there. 5 innings, 3 hits, 0 runs, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts for him. Obviously, you want to see him provide a little bit more length, but a guy that we had talked about on our last show, Jared Schuster, coming in with some effective long relief behind him. And I liked what Garrett Crochet said post-game too. He said, he felt very confident in that, even, he took ownership that he has to go longer in the game, but he felt confident in the relief corps coming in behind him, and they sure as shit got the job done.
So a couple different points here. I'll start with Garrett Crochet. Did not have good fastball command in this particular outing here. Really a stark contrast from what we saw his previous outing against Cleveland on last Friday night. And look, that's to be expected here. He's right up now against that inning ceiling that he's had all time since coming into the major leagues. But look, Stephen Stone talks about this pretty regularly, that for starting pitchers and even for seasoned starting pitchers, which no one can confuse Garrett Crochet to be at this point, in a 10-start stretch, you're going to have maybe 4 starts where you have good stuff, 4 starts where you have okay stuff, and 2 starts where you're going to have bad stuff. It's those 4 starts where you have average stuff to below that ultimately is going to define how good you really are. And if you are able to battle through that when you don't have your premium level stuff, obviously Washington is not, an offensive juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination, but he was able to go out there, and when he pitched himself into jams, he was able to cinch it up and hunker down, as the great Hawk Harrelson would say, and find a way to get out of those innings. And so I think that's an important step in the progression for him as a starting pitcher here, as he looks to continue down this road for the remainder of the 2024 season and beyond. And Jared Schuster, like I said, he just really went out there and he put him on the table again. And he is really looking like the guy that could actually be something out of this Aaron Bummer trade with my Barbs over the course of the winter. I know a lot was made about the sheer quantity and volume of guys that the Sox got back. And I think Schuster was in a lot of ways kind of an afterthought to that. I know Mike Soroka was really the headliner and the guy that I was most excited about, hoping that he could rekindle that all-star form from 2018, 2019. But Schuster has looked very good, and he's looked like a viable part of this bullpen in an important swingman role. So if he is able to go out there and continue this for a long stretch of time, if you compare what he's doing right now with what Aaron Bummer is doing for my Barbs, that's a Chris Getz win right there. And, you got to be happy about that.
Yeah, I got to use a hockeyism here, as the great Eddie O would say, know your role, accept, and execute. And that's exactly what Jared Schuster is doing in that swingman long relief role there. The rest of the bullpen, Steve, the high leverage guys getting it done in back-to-back games, that being Jordan Leisure and Michael Kopech. Now, I know there was a little bit of command that got wonky with Michael Kopech, but once again, he navigates through it, is able to get out of it unscathed. I know Tuesday's game was not a save because of the 4-run difference, but then on Wednesday picks up his 5th save of the season. What are you seeing from these high leverage guys here?
I think that might have been a couple of the best performances that we've seen out of Jordan Leisure to this point. Was really going out there, commanding the fastball again and utilizing the slider to put guys away. So very positive signs for him in some higher leverage situations right there. Michael Kopech, again, just kind of one of the things that we will see from him from time to time is that fastball command will get away from him, and he will unfortunately pitch himself into some precarious situations, giving himself some additional base runners. So that's just something he is going to have to learn to continue to navigate. I would still like to see him utilize that slider more frequently. I really think that is a plus pitch for him. He's been very fastball cutter heavy his last 3 or 4 times out, which is really interesting when you look at the data and just how much he's starting to incorporate that cutter into the mix. So obviously, Ethan Katz and Brian Bannister see something there. Like I said, from my perspective, I'd like to see the slider used a little bit more, but he's just got to continue to pound the strike zone and work ahead of guys. That's always going to be the biggest thing for Michael Kopech, whether it's as a starter or now as a reliever.
All right, I think that wraps up the pitching on that front. Let's get to the offense from Wednesday's game. It was a low-scoring affair, only 2 runs on the board. Both of them belonged to the White Sox. Tommy Pham drives in one of the runs, and Corey Lee tacks on another with an RBI single. I think we've discussed the Tommy Pham effect a lot, and we've covered that in the last 2 episodes since his arrival to the South Side and all of that. So let's focus on Corey Lee, and I'm hearing from sources that you might be a Corey Lee guy. Can you confirm or deny?
It is hashtag confirmed. I am officially a Corey Lee guy. Some of the at-bats that you're seeing from him at this point and understanding situations. I think it was the second game on Tuesday night there. He inside out a pitch. Or no, that couldn't have been because Maldonado was behind the plate that game.
It was in Wednesday's game then, right?
Wednesday's game. Yep. Thank you for that. Just keeping his hands inside the baseball right there, taking a pitch the other way, hitting the ball through a hole, and we've been seeing that a lot more from him. This is one of the things I highlighted in the piece I wrote over at ontapsportsnet.com recently. Just the improved swing decisions that we're seeing from Corey Lee, laying off of pitches outside the strike zone and focusing and really being aggressive on pitches in the strike zone so that you can go and do damage and make a positive impact on this team. And you just can't be anything other than impressed in the 180-degree difference in what Corey Lee has done in the batter's box this year relative to the guy that we saw the last 6 weeks of the 2023 season after he came over from Houston.
His all-around game has been impressive. I think you did a good rundown of the offense there. And then he stole a base too. So he's got some speed, some legs for a catcher. That is a very, very nice development in this whole thing. It's a small aspect of it because, obviously you want solid defense and offensive contributions first and foremost, but it's just, something else that adds to his profile, gives value to the team. Right. And then they had discussed on the broadcast that one of the few stats, he says he doesn't look at his stats a lot, but one of the few that he checks pretty frequently is that pop time and the, velocity on his throws down to second base. And he's, atop the leaderboard on those. So once again, a breath of fresh air, a competent catcher that can throw runners out and provide value at the plate as well as behind it. This is a foreign concept in White Sox land, Steve.
We might be living in bizarro world here. Just looking at the all-around game here and the positive contributions that he's able to make in every aspect right now. Who would have seen this coming, when he was acquired a little less than a year ago? And I think another important thing to talk about on that base running front right there, it's not just the stolen bases that are an important component of the base running piece. I talk all the time about being able to take that additional 90 feet. And if this team is ever good again, when Corey Lee is in a White Sox uniform here, the ability to take an extra 90 feet on a team can be the difference between winning and losing a baseball game, particularly if you are playing close games, which, this team does not blow a lot of teams out offensively here. So they have to do little things like that, like being able to get quality reads on balls in the outfield, being able to take that extra 90 feet. And Lee has been somebody that has done that pretty consistently to this point. So the instincts, along with having that foot speed right there, is really contributing to him being just a solid base runner for this team at the catcher position, which you don't see a whole lot of.
Yeah, just overall, got to be nothing but impressed with him, just especially given how lost he looked at the plate last year. I think there were some just growing pains behind it in terms of defense, and you tell he put in the work in the offseason, and then it's nice to see results on the other end of that coming out of it. So, I will maintain that it's got a way to go till star level, but he's making very nice strides in his development, and he's becoming a serviceable player for the White Sox. Now, let's see how he responds to a slump, because guess what? It's baseball. It's a 162-game grind. We'll let you get you down, get you back in your bad old ways. That it's always important to see how guys respond to A, adversity, and B, adjustments being made to them by the other team. So we'll keep an eye on Corey Lee, but as you just heard it right there, Steve is now hashtag confirmed a Corey Lee guy. let's get into some housekeeping. Steve, the White Sox made a few transactions, and one of them was a trade, acquiring a outfielder from the Astros, Corey Julks. He was recently DFA'd by the Astros and kind of a roster crunch for them. White Sox send a low-level pitching prospect in Luis Rodriguez to Houston in this deal. It's nothing earth-shattering, what have you, but I'm sure there will be people upset about the 20-year-old that you sent to, Houston in this deal for a 26-year-old outfielder.
I think the more fascinating thing from my perspective is this organization really just does not like Oscar Colas. It's pretty evident at this point. I mean, you see him bringing in guys like Rafael Ortega, now making this trade for Corey Julks here. They obviously are intent on just not being in the Oscar Colas business anymore. And look, he did not do himself any favors with his performance last year, but I do find it just somewhat peculiar that he is really just the whipping boy for things right now. When you see guys at the major league level right now not being fundamentally sound and given a lot more leash than he was ultimately. And it's just kind of one of those things where you have to ask yourself the question is this organization and is Oscar Colas, is it going to be better for everybody involved if there's just a parting of the ways at some point here in the relative near future, whether that's as, a minor leaguer from minor leaguer swap, because it just doesn't seem as though they are intent on utilizing him as part of this big league roster at any point soon.
I think you could go the way of your former baby boy, Popeye Rodriguez.
Too soon.
Maybe what we're trending toward on this. It's a good point that you bring up there. Yolks is just, I don't know, like it's nothing, like I said, it's nothing earth shattering on this front, but I didn't realize that he got that large of a sample size at the major league level with Houston last year. So who knows? Because guess what? Much as we love the Tommy Pham effect, that guy is gone come when the calendar turns to August. So you're going to have to fill innings in the outfield, and who knows? Maybe he offers you a little bit of pop playing in this field at the prime summer months when it can bulk and carry a little bit. So we'll have to see what happens on that front. But I think the Oscar Colas one is a good takeaway from that deal. All right, no need to spend too much time on that. Let's move to another item here. Some rotation shuffling. Mike Soroka has lost his rotation spot. He's being moved to the bullpen, and Brad Keller will enter the rotation. Steve, this thankfully eliminates the terrible scenario that I predicted would play out Saturday if Mike Soroka would make the start in the Bronx here. We've been on it the last couple of episodes. Anytime there has been a Soroka start, he's just fallen flat. The stuff is flat. The results are poor, and now he's getting moved to the rotation. They want him to work on some things like Chris Flexen did when he went from the starting rotation to the bullpen and now back into the rotation with some success. I think it's going to be a much more of an uphill climb for Mike Soroka on this front.
I do too. And maybe one of the things that happens right now, as I've highlighted on a couple of different occasions here, the slider is still grading out as an above average pitch for him. Maybe now this move into the bullpen here, he just becomes a slider heavy guy, and it's all about pitching backwards for him. And maybe he can find some level of effectiveness in that role. I've talked about other guys in recent years that were failed starters, that turned themselves into viable relievers. I mean, you look at a guy like a Wade Davis, who was a former top pitching prospect with the Tampa Bay Rays, transitioned into the bullpen and became a very heavy breaking ball usage guy, had a lot of success there. So I'm not saying that is definitively what is going to happen with Mike Soroka, but at this point, they might as well try something here because what he was doing in the starting rotation wasn't working. It was very evident. So he's at a little bit of a career crossroads right now. Maybe he's able to go out there and reinvent himself as a breaking ball specialist coming out of the bullpen. And who knows, maybe that is the thing that keeps him a major league pitcher for a couple of years.
Yep, I think that's a perfect breakdown of it. Brad Keller's nothing to get overly excited about, but he was serviceable in his one spot start and the 3 bullpen appearances that he had before. So 2019 us would be like, WTF as we say this, but I am thankful that Saturday will be Brad Keller Day instead of Mike Soroka Day against the Yankees' potent lineup, especially at the top, because that thing could have gotten out of hand fast. Would it have been Soroka start? So we'll have to see how that plays out. That brings us into our last bit of this and that. Steve, you were at least parts of 3 games throughout this homestand, and I think you put out a pretty outlandish take that you had fun at the ballpark. A, I didn't know that was allowed, but B is fun hashtag back.
It was really interesting. It was a strange feeling almost. I mean, I remember the exact moment that fun died for me at the ballpark. It was off the bat of Josh Naylor in the top of the 9th inning on May 9th of 2022. From that moment up until this past weekend, except for the one night when we had the opportunity to be in a skybox with everybody else from the On Tap crew, and we were this close to getting to watch Dylan Cease make history against the Minnesota Twins. That was really the last enjoyable experience in the ballpark. And even in games that they're winning, it's just the vibe in the park hasn't been great. And Friday night it was just it was a good vibe in the crowd. They deployed the multi-home run strategy, and it's almost like when your team is struggling offensively, and when you are just a dead ass team and not scoring runs and not hitting the ball out of the ballpark, it makes things feel infinitely worse than they really are. As a former pitcher, I love a good 1-0, 2-1 pitcher's duel. But when you are watching a team night in, night out that is just struggling offensively to put anything together, and then you see that happen on a couple of different occasions right there, it really does get your juices flowing a little bit. And so, to be there and just kind of feel a little bit of energy back in the crowd, and that was fun. And, I think back to, even 2019, when that team went 72-90, there was a lot of fun nights at the ballpark. They didn't win as many games as we all wanted them to, but there wasn't this sense of dread that there really was for much of the 2022 and 2023 seasons going to the corner of 35th and Chills. And I didn't feel that these last 2 nights here. So I'm pretty excited for this team to get back home after this tough East Coast road trip that they got coming up here. And it's going to be a tough challenge with Baltimore and Toronto then coming back in. But I'm looking forward to getting back to the ballpark, and it feels good to say that.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree with you in terms of it felt like kind of just like sluggish of sorts, even in games that they would win the few times it would in the past, kind of 2 seasons before this. But, it's good to have a little renewed sense of energy. And man, Tony couldn't be on with us, but he would be saying, of course, when fireworks are going off, it's fun. And you got to hit the ball over that fencing there to light those fireworks off during the game. So, I mean, you do the math. It's pretty simple on that front. So let's move on. Take a look at what's on tap next as we wind this show down. Heading to the Bronx, 3-game series at the Yankees. It's going to be a tough one. The Yankees are 30-15. They're first place in the AL East. They just swept the Minnesota Twins out in Minnesota, and they're 8-2 in their last 10. We know all the big names, Steve: Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton. It's going to be a real tough challenge here. And I know the vibes have been good here, but we could be staring down the barrel of a series loss, if not a sweep.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a very challenging weekend ahead for this club. I thought it was pretty funny seeing the infamous MLB executive Burner tweeting out there earlier today that the Yankees were just getting warmed up for October by sweeping the Twins. And I love seeing that. I mean, anytime the Twins lose, it just, I feel it in my loins. It feels great. And so knowing that the Yankees are coming in hot, they're playing really good baseball right now, this is going to be a very challenging weekend. The pitching matchups are really not in the Sox favor, if we're going to be totally honest with ourselves. You got that little Mickey Mouse ballpark that they have over there in the Bronx. This has the opportunity to get out of hand quickly in all 3 of these games here. So it's going to be a very tall order ahead for this group right here to try to keep some of this positive momentum going.
Yeah. Okay, let's get those probables that you'd mentioned in the pitching matchups. Friday, 6:05 start. It'll be Mike Clevenger for the Sox against Nestor Cortez for the Yankees. Saturday, as we'd mentioned earlier, with Soroka being moved out of the rotation, it'll be Brad Keller for our Sox against Louis Seal of the Yankees. And then on Sunday, that finale at 12:35 Central Time, Chris Flexen. You're flexing against former White Sox pitcher Carlos Rodon. So, Steve, predictions in this. First, let me get my buddy Mike G in here. He says, bold prediction, Sox take 2 of 3 from the Yankees. I hope you're right, G, because we'll be watching that game together on Saturday. He says, not bold prediction, though. Beers will be flowing. That's hashtag 100% confirmed. I'll see you on Saturday, G. All right. Steve, your predictions for the series.
Prediction, pain. I got a real bad feeling about this. I'm having a really hard time seeing this team get a win this weekend here. Again, just given the pitching probables and how well the Yankees are playing right now, I'm hoping for the best, but I'm expecting the absolute worst.
Yeah, you know what? I could see a sweep, and it feels like, you're also, starting a road trip, and it's a bit of a daunting one, too. I know the Blue Jays aren't playing as well as they wanted to, but you still got to make that trip out east, first to New York and then up to Toronto afterwards. So I could see it, especially given the pitching matchups that you say here. But I could also see them taking 1 of 3. If I were just eyeing this up right now, maybe that Friday night game, you'd have to get a nice outing from Mike Clevenger, but with Nestor Cortez on the mound, I feel like that with facing a couple of lefties here in the last 2 games against the Nationals, that may have been a good primer for getting ready for it, as long as you're just ready for the wild, ridiculous, leg and hand motions that he'll employ from time to time on the mound. Always makes for an entertaining viewing experience. But I'll go, you went with the sweep. I'll go with 1 out of 3. That'll be my prediction. So we got the board here. Besides a White Sox sweep between my buddy in the comments and then my 1 of 3, you got the sweep there. But either way, Steve, I think I'm gonna have to watch one of my favorite movies to get ready for this, Bronx Tale, and I think the weekend will be filled with memes from it because nobody cares. Mickey Mantle doesn't care about you. Why should you care?
I, for one, am shocked to see that you're going to be using those memes all across the X machine all weekend. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But it's fitting given the circumstances.
Right. All right. So that about does it for this episode of Sox on Tap. We appreciate everybody tuning in for a little happy hour edition with us here. Once again, successful homestand. Nice to see on that front. White Sox playing a little better ball as of late, but be prepared because some pain may be back in the forecast with a hot Yankees team that you have to go and visit. But we'll see how it plays out. Follow us on the socials at Sox On Tap and at On Tap Sportsnet. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube at On Tap Sportsnet there so you don't miss a show. We'll probably be back with you on Sunday. And other than that, check out OnTapSportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports, literature, and podcasting needs. Steve, one final thought, make quick, and then we got to get out of here.
Final thought, like I said, 5-2 homestand, fun, good, positive vibes at the ballpark. Let's see some more of that. Let's, have a continuation of some solid play on the road. Even if they don't come out of this with a winning road trip, just play representative baseball and let's get back home and let's have some more fun.
All right, my one will be quick and very specific. That Mickey Mouse fence that is out in right field at Yankee Stadium. It would be nice for a left-handed hitter to take advantage of that with a pull shot. I'm talking to you, Mr. Gavin Sheet. So I think we're going to have to get on our guy Tony to be able to, inject some pointers for his son on that front, because I'd like to see that. If it's there and it's short porch, take advantage of it because, sure as shit, the Yankees will. That's all we've got for this episode of Sox on Tap. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.